Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
The Inspector General system has weathered political pressure before, but this moment is testing how durable it really is. Even so, the day-to-day work of audits, investigations, and accountability continues. Former FDIC Inspector General Jay Lerner is here with a perspective from inside the system. Jay, thanks so much for joining me today. It's great to have you on the show.
Great. Thank you, Terry, and happy to be here.
There is a new book out about IGs and their duty, authority, and integrity. You wrote the chapter on the history and evolution of the IG community. From where we sit today, what do you think people most misunderstand about the role of IGs?
Well, I think it's important to understand how IGs first came about, a little bit of the history, and that's why I wrote the chapter. If you take a step back to the 1970s, in the post-Watergate era, 1972 was the break-in and President Nixon resigned in 1974. And there were a number of legislative reforms after that in the late 70s. One of them was the Inspector General Act, which created these internal watchdogs at the different agencies. It started with 12 IGs and has now expanded to over 70 IGs over time. It really wasn't a new concept. It had dated back to the American Revolution or even before that, but it was an opportunity to establish independent watchdogs within the agency and having audits and evaluations of programs combined with investigations all under one roof. And it was really a unique sort of creation to speak truth to power, if you will, and to be able to delve deeply within an agency and to make findings and recommendations about how to improve the operations of that agency. And then over time, it's developed over the past 45 or 50 years, and it's gone through a various evolution during that time.
Do you think that agencies and the people that they support appreciate the value of the IG?
I think it's once been characterized as the most important public servant that you've never heard of. And I think it's still something that I'm educating my family on, what an IG does. My nieces and nephews think it stands for Instagram, but it's really for Inspector General. And I think you're right. It is somewhat underappreciated in terms of the value that oversight can bring to an agency and to government operations as a whole.
Well, nobody wants the bad news to get out, and oftentimes that's what's associated with the IG, right?
I think that's right. That's some of the association, but frankly, in my mind, an IG should call it like they see it, whether it's bad or good, and to be honest about and candid about it. And I think that builds the credibility and trust in the position, in the institution of an Inspector General and in oversight as a whole.
This administration started with a pretty adversarial take on the IG community. They fired 17 of them very quickly. There have been continuing legal fights about that, sustained pressure on all of the institutions that support oversight. I know you're not currently in it today, but you're close to it. What's your sense of the morale in the IG community today?
Well, as you mentioned, I retired in 2023, so I've been out for a little bit. I now teach a course at George Washington University on oversight and accountability. And the way I've sort of structured that course, being a lawyer, is along the lines of the Constitution, the first three articles of the Constitution, which includes the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judiciary branch. And they all have important roles in the checks and balances within the government, really checking the executive powers. If you think of the legislative branch, they have the standing committees, appropriations, the Government Accountability Office, even things like the Congressional Budget Office or the Congressional Research Service. Within the executive branch is where the IGs fit in. And there's also whistleblowers within the executive branch. There's the Office of Special Counsel, which protects whistleblowers, the Office of Government Ethics, looking at ethics issues, and then, of course, the judiciary, the courts and lawyers as well. And I add even a fourth branch, the fourth estate, if you will, the press and the media, as investigative journalists and think tanks and non-governmental organizations provide very important oversight of the executive branch. I think 2025, frankly, was a pretty tough year for oversight as a whole. And there were, I would say, a diminishment of oversight during that time in looking at each of those four elements, the three branches of government and the fourth estate. As a result, I think there is a lower sense of morale, at least anecdotally. That's what I hear. And I think staffing has gone down. I think there's been a lot of people that have left the oversight community. And I do think that has had an effect on morale. The folks that stick around, still working hard and still doing their job and plugging away and doing the right things. And so I'm hopeful that that can rebound and bounce back, and that people will be proud of the Inspector General community and oversight as a whole.
Jay Lerner is the former Inspector General for the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Jay, in addition to being adversarial towards the IG and oversight community, this administration has put a lot of emphasis on attacking waste, fraud, and abuse in government programs. How do you thread those two things together?
Well, the president has established a new task force on fraud, and I think that can be helpful. The Department of Justice previously had a fraud section, which I was a part of years ago, and there was a lot of fraud enforcement. As a prosecutor, that's where I was. There's was an emphasis in the investigative community as well. And we'll have to see how that plays out. It could be used in a political sense, the new task force. And I think some people are very concerned about that as an aspect of it, but we'll have to see what the future holds in that regard. I was proud of the work that the Department of Justice had previously done with respect to fraud enforcement and prevention and investigations as well.
Let's talk about the SIGI Council as part of this ecosystem. It's been described as kind of the connective tissue for those 70 IGs that you mentioned earlier. But OMB has tried to defund it, to stand down its websites. There's been, again, kind of ongoing legal contention about how that should operate. What is SIGI? Why is it so important to this community? And what's its current status?
Sure. SIGI was created, and that was the acronym for Council of Inspectors General on Integrity and Efficiency. It's the 70-plus IGs that you had mentioned. It was created in 2008 and actually started in 2009. And it really is that connective tissue, if you will, representing the IG community as a whole. Each IG has jurisdiction over their individual agencies, but it's a way to bring the lessons learned and best practices throughout the community and to be able to do cross-cutting or joint projects across agency lines on topic areas. So, for example, one of the areas was the pandemic relief, which was $5 trillion going out the door of our taxpayer money for economic relief and healthcare and medical care. And the Pandemic Response Accountability Committee was created as a committee within SIGI to look at those cross-cutting issues across agencies. And there's about 20 inspectors general that participate in the PAC, the Pandemic Response Accountability Committee. I was one of them, and it was an opportunity to bring that collective knowledge together, and I think really has succeeded quite a bit. SIGI also does a lot of training so that there's consistency among the quality of personnel within the IG community. They handle the Integrity Committee, which is a self-policing organization where there are allegations of misconduct. It does peer reviews to make sure those quality standards are met for audits, evaluations, inspections, and investigations as well. So SIGI serves a lot of functions to bring the community together and has really done great work over that time.
You also mentioned the PRAC, and it looks like the PRAC has got a new lease on life. They're going to be extended to watch over the expenditures from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. What do you think that they'll be finding there?
It's hard to know, but anytime the government gives out money, and it's always ripe for fraud areas. And I think one of the things that the PRAC did that the subsequent joint efforts can benefit from is they created these blueprints of how to submit government programs and how to implement them so that there is a reduction in fraud or that can be deterred or mitigated or prevented in the first place. And so I think that's where the PRAC can really be beneficial of how government programs operate in the future. As you said, SIGI has had some funding issues, and OMB has cut that back in October, reinstated the funding in November, about 6 weeks after that happened. And now it's on a sort of a quarterly basis that SIGI gets funded. And so we'll have to see once again what the future holds. I hope that will continue. As I mentioned, I think SIGI and the PRAC have done some impressive work over time.
We started our conversation today talking about the history of the IG community, and then we talked about current events. Let's talk about the future. From where you sit and from where you're watching and from what you're teaching, what does the future of the oversight community look like to you right now?
Well, I think it faces some challenges, and we've identified a few already in terms of funding for SIGI. I think another challenge that it currently faces is the vacancies. 28 IG offices are vacant right now. 7 are designated federal entities. The other 21 are presidentially appointed Senate confirmed IGs, but 28 out of the 72 is about 40%. There's 2 nominees for those positions, and it'd be good to fill the vacancies. Some of those vacancies have been around for quite a long time, some over 200 days and some up to 2,500 days, almost 7 years. It's important to fill those vacancies. I think that's a real challenge for the IG community, as well as the new leaders. Many of the new IGs, there were 8 that were confirmed in 2025. They're new leaders, and so some of them do not have much experience in the IG community or in the oversight community. In addition, there's new leadership within SIGI, and there's lower-level employees within the IG offices got bumped up to supervisory or management positions. And so all of that creates a bit of an atmosphere of uncertainty in terms of some inexperience and loss of the institutional knowledge. You mentioned many IGs were fired, and I think it represented something on the order of about 350 years of institutional experience. And so it's hard to replace that, and I think that will be a challenge for the community going forward.
Are you worried about growing political influence over the function of the IG and whether or not the IGs can operate in an independent, objective space?
I think it's a concern that everyone should have in their mind. There's been a lot written about it. I would say it's a little early to make any judgments about that, but I think it's something to watch as we go forward. Once again, because of some of the inexperience, some of the comments that have been made, the way the IGs were fired, I think that all raises the risk level and a concern that we should be cognizant. Independence is so critical to an inspector general. I learned that as when I was at the Department of Justice Inspector General's office as Chief of Staff and at the FDIC, to make sure that you can call it like you see it, and whether that's good or bad, and without fear or favor. And it's important to have that independence in any oversight, and particularly for inspectors general.
Jay Lerner is the former Inspector General for the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Jay, thanks so much for sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you for having me, Terry.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts.